Hello, so I'm Luke. I'm not used to talking to the camera. Usually I'm singing at my laptop, but I'm going to try and explain the algorithm I made for that art that I sent to Has last week. And hopefully it all makes sense. You don't have to understand everything, but basically algorithms are straightforward once you know what the step's doing. So let's go. Okay, so here's the program I wrote. I've written this in a language called Python. It's the only one I really know that well. The first one I started learning. And first thing to point out is at the top of most programs, you'll have imports. And basically, I'm just importing functions that are useful, that other people, much more intelligent people, have made. And I can just use them rather than actually have to make them myself because they're quite complicated. I don't have much time to do this. So the next thing that we look at is, so the first thing the program actually does then is it looks at the list that I've made. So I've made a text file called hasvideos.txt. You can see it on the left here, hasvideos.txt. If I click on it, it's just the 6 videos that has on a YouTube account. I've also got my own one, Luke videos, with all of my videos on there. And it just opens them up and puts them in a list so that we can use it later on. So what do I use them for? Well, I use them so I can automatically take the number of views and number of likes on each of the videos. So to do this, this piece of code sends a message to YouTube and says, can I have your code for this website? So the HTML code. That's what all websites are. Oh, that's what the websites are made in, usually HTML5. And then I'm just searching through it to find how many views it has, so the view count there, and how many likes it has, which is kind of linked to the like button there. So once I've searched through it, I'll just show you what I mean by HTML code. So there's a has swinging as a brilliant introduction to a latest video. Great action shot, that. So if I go to, let's say, the likes button down here, it's number 5. If I right click on it and inspect element, then it'll show you all the HTML code that's used to build this website. And if you see the one that's highlighted, which is what I clicked on, it actually says 5 likes there. So I wanted to just find that in the code, find the number next to likes, and then use that, take it and use it in my code. So that's what it does. It does that for the likes and the number of views. And then the next thing I do is make the canvas. So I get to choose the resolution of the canvas. I can make the window bigger and make it more spread out, but I picked a kind of a average sized canvas. Then what I did there is, so I set the colors. So this is just using RGB values, so how much red, how much green, how much blue, to make the color I want. So I copied the art by Mondrian, the same colors there, and I tell the canvas to be filled with white. So it's the white canvas. So the next thing I do is this part, as it says there, puts videos in order of the most views first. So I wanted the one with the most views to come first in the list, because later on when I'm picking the when I'm putting rectangles onto the canvas, it's easier if you put the biggest one first and then try to fit the smaller ones around it, rather than put smaller ones in and then try to fit a big one around those. Just makes it much easier for the algorithm to work, and more likely as well. So once I've done that, then I just start the creating of the rectangles and then drawing them. So the first one says create rectangles. I'll just show you what that function does. So down the bottom you'll find the definitions. So this is what this code does. So I've written this one. So basically what it does, where should we start? About here. So it's creating a rectangle. It's giving it an area based on the amount of views that that particular video has, and it's the ratio of it compared to the actual total amount of views that all the videos have. I then tell it what kind of size based on the canvas, the area of the canvas that I want for the rectangle. So it picks a random width, because I didn't want all the rectangles to have the exact same dimensions. I wanted some to be taller and thinner, and some to be longer, and I can't think of the words for this, but you know what I mean. So they don't all just look the same. Some could be more like squares. So I made a bit of variation in picking a little slightly random number, so it's not always the same, and then basing the height off that. So they always have the correct area, but they can be different heights and different widths. So then I actually try to not place it. I suppose it is placing the rectangles in a position, but I'm not actually drawing them. I'm kind of just giving them a position before they actually get drawn later on. Once I've given it a position, which is random again, so every time you make the algorithm, it puts them all in random positions, so it's different every single time. It checks, is it touching the sides of the screen? So I didn't want any of the rectangles to be off the screen. I want them all to be on the screen and not touching the sides. And then if it is touching the sides, it just goes back and does the whole process again. Tries to give it a random width and so on, random position, and checks again, is it touching the sides? If it's not touching the sides, then it moves on and it checks, is it touching any of the rectangles that have already been drawn? If it is touching another rectangle, it goes back again and tries to put it in a different position. So it just repeats that until it's not touching the sides and it's not touching any of the rectangles. And then I add it to my list to be drawn later on. So it's ready to be drawn once that rectangle is done. And it repeats that for as many times as many rectangles, no, as many videos as I have. Yeah, as many rectangles. One other thing I had to do was sometimes the last rectangle, because there's so much of the space on the screen is taken up, I made this tiny little bit of code, 2 lines. If I've tried, I suppose, and the tries there and there as well. If it's tried to put the position of the rectangle in position more than 50 times, then to make it easier for it, I just told it to make that rectangle a bit smaller, half it, so that it's more likely to fit it on the screen somewhere. Okay. Once I've created the rectangle, so again, they haven't been drawn yet, so the next thing is to draw the rectangles with black lines. You can see it says there. So once I draw the rectangles, I actually do this by, first of all, choosing the colors based on how many likes there are. So this views list count 1, that just means how many likes does the video have. I could probably just have called it likes instead, but I don't know, that's quicker. It takes up 1 less line. So it checks, is it more than 10? If it is, then the rectangle will be red. If it's more than 7, the rectangle will be blue. If it's more than 5, the rectangle will be yellow. And then if it's less than 6, if it's 5 or less, then it's white. Okay, so what it does, it draws black lines. So from every corner, every rectangle, from each of its corners, it draws a black line straight up and a black line straight across the whole screen. So basically, the black lines are generated by the rectangles themselves, which is why you'll see they line up with every corner of every rectangle when I show you the pictures, the art, when it's created. So I draw it with the black lines, but the problem is, say the first rectangle I made, all of the other rectangles, if they line up with it, the black lines would be going across it and cutting across the rectangles. I didn't like the way that looked. So what I did was, after I've drawn all of the rectangles with the black lines going off them, I then did it just without the black lines. And that basically is just putting them, making sure that all the rectangles are on top of any black lines, so nothing's going across them. And then that's basically it. This last bit of code that's actually running it's just a loop that opens up the kind of the Python window. It doesn't open it, but keeps it open for me to look at it. Updates the display, and then this just lets me quit. Before I had this code in, there was no way of actually closing the window after it had opened, so without having to click on it till it's not responding and then say close this window. I think that's about it. So I'll show you the code running. Just make sure it has videos. Yeah. So if I press Shift F10 to run the code, now down the bottom here, you'll see it starts scraping the URLs. So there's one URL. Oh, it's going quite fast today. So scraping the URLs, it's asking them for the number of views and likes. Once it's done that, it quite quickly draws the art. So as you can see, it's quite a nice, well, not very spread out, but you know, it's random, so I can't make it much better than that. I could, but I don't have the time. So you can see they're not all squares. Some are the different heights, some are different widths, because I put that randomly in before. And as I said earlier, so the black lines are all created from the corners of each thing. So that's why there's these lined up here, because there's a black line going from that red rectangle, there's a black line going from this blue one, and a black line going from this yellow one. So they're all lined up. So there's a problem with that is when you have more than 6 videos. And I'll show you if I run my code. So I just need to change this to Luke. So it's changing one thing, so it's using my videos instead. It's going to take a fairly long time, so I'll maybe pause the video here and come back once it's done the 51 URLs. Okay, so it's finished rectangle 51. For some reason, it doesn't open the video, it doesn't open the window automatically with mine. So it must be something to do with how many videos there are, how many rectangles. But here it is, so it's a bit more of a mess. And also, it shows how little likes I get. If white is if you've got less than a certain amount, I can't remember what I put, but because I haven't got many likes on my videos, lots of the white rectangles appear. So these bigger ones and coloured ones are probably the ones that I did when I was still a teacher at Gur. So that got a lot of likes and a lot of views from the pupils there. So you can get the rest. Very few likes at all. So if they're white, that means it must be, let's see, where was it? Must be less than 6, I suppose. Yeah. If I change that number to 1, there'd be a few more coloured ones, but there you go. So as you can see, there's lots more black lines. I've tried to change that. I can make it a bit better probably, but I just, at this point can't be asked. Okay, so there you go. That's how the art was made. I hope that was understandable, coherent, comprehensible, whatever. There you go.